Hi, everyone, and welcome to session 3 on memory. We reviewed these questions. What's your earliest memory? Most people's earliest memory is around 3 years old. If you remember something before you were 3 years old, chances are it's because it was an illness or an injury, something kind of traumatic that happened to you, because most little kids don't really start storing memories until they're about 3 years old. And their earliest memory often is confabulated. Now, what that means is you don't literally remember it, but you've been told about it so many times that you think you remember it. Now, let's go back. So, earliest memories are usually illnesses or injuries. We're usually at least 3 years old. If you're a lot older than 3 years old, that's an interesting thing because most of us can remember things when we're about 3 years old. Okay, and I asked you if your memory was positive, negative, or neutral. The first memory is often negative, but the rest of your memories are, if you do like a whole download of everything anybody can remember, most of us have the majority of our memories are positive. Unless you have depression, then your brain is letting you only really remember the negative things. So, your first grade teacher, got that in mind? Okay, so that's one of your earliest memories, and here's one of your memories in the last year. Now, I ask you those questions because for a lot of you, it's easier to remember your first grade teacher's name than it is to remember a gift that you got for your birthday, which is within a year. Why is that? Because you rehearsed your first grade teacher's name over a period of about 180 days. Whereas the gift that you received, unless it was a big one, like, you're wearing a piece of jewelry, using your phone, you got a car, something big like that, your memory of it isn't really enhanced because you haven't rehearsed it over and over again. So it's rehearsal that gets things into your long-term memory and makes them easy to recall because you've retrieved them from your long-term memory several times to say, "Good morning, Mrs. Baker," or in my case, it was Mrs. Potts. Okay, so most people's memories, the total are positive unless they have depression. Okay, so I just want to, this is a reminder to you to have your clickers ready during lecture. And I also bring a couple extra clickers to class with me. If you happen to forget your clicker and you're the first couple people to ask to borrow it, I can loan you a clicker and you will still get your points. Okay, so now this is the possible essay topic for memory. Now remember, I've already asked you one on student success. Now this is the one for memory. Describe how a stimulus becomes a memory using the memory model presented in lecture, using an example, and explain the 3 theories of forgetting. I think this is, oops, my picture's in the way. 3 theories of forgetting. So to prepare for this one, you take notes during lecture, you read the chapter on memory, you write your essay and show it to a fellow student or to me or to a tutor at our library. You don't really have to go over to a tutor, but if you are not comfortable with your writing, then you might want to do that. And then you memorize your points. So I'm going to give you specific information about how a stimulus becomes a memory and our 3 theories of forgetting. So you will have plenty of notes on this and you'll actually make a drawing of the memory diagram and you can bring this with you to the exam on April 23rd. Okay, you don't need to write this down, but here's what I'd like you to get out of our discussion of memory. First, you can write, and I put essay in a kind of quotations because these answers to these questions I'm giving you that you're going to produce on April 23rd aren't really essays. They don't have like an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. You just answer the questions that I ask you, and that comprises your entire response. I hope that you'll learn to create mnemonic devices to enhance your memory of academic content. Mnemonic devices are little memory tricks. And I hope that you can learn to apply memory theory and techniques to your own study process. I am not kidding when I say if you know how to maximize your memory, you're going to have a more efficient study process that is more effective, and then you can have a life and be a student. Okay, so here's a way to organize our thinking about memory. We're going to test your memory. On the next slide, there are twin boys. Without writing anything down, because that would be cheating, because I want you to really try to use your memory. Memorize as many differences between the boys as possible. Include everything, their physical appearance, their clothing, and their actions. So short-term memory lasts less than 60 seconds. It's less than a minute that you can use to put things in your short-term memory. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do this memorization. I'm going to set a timer on my phone. Clock, timer, 60 seconds. Okay, ready, set, go. Here's the boys. Okay, some of the things you're memorizing are fading now unless you've got a strategy for remembering them, because you only have 15 seconds to go. Three, two, one, done. And there we have it. Okay, now I want to go back and just have this slide back up while you now write down everything you remember about the differences between those boys. Go. Okay, that's 30 seconds. Unless you have a strategy, you're probably out of memory. Five seconds. Okay, done. All right, so there's the boys, and here's my questions. How'd you approach this? Did you make some kind of categories? Did you divide the boys into halves or squares or quadrants of any type? Did you make up a story? Are you lucky enough to have eidetic imagery? This is also known as photographic memory. So hopefully we would be hearing from each of you that say that maybe you divided them in half and you compared their right arms and right legs to, on each boy, or you divided them at the waist, and above the waist were these differences, below the waist were these differences. Or the most effective thing, if you're not lucky enough to have eidetic imagery, is to make up a story. So you would say, once upon a time there were two twin boys. They both played soccer, and they were numbers 2 and 3. One of them had blonde hair and was tall. The other one had strawberry blonde hair and was not as tall as his brother. And you make up an entire story which helps you recall all of the differences. So, at this point, if we were in class, I would be asking you, how many differences did you recall? Did you get maybe 8, 10, 12? And then I would ask those of you who got lots of differences exactly how you did it. And many of you would say you made up the story or you made up some kind of quadrants, something like that to help you remember. Okay, here's the boys again. There you go. So, one of them has a necklace. His t-shirt's gray. His is white. This one has a band on his left hand. This one has a band on his right hand. They're numbers 2 and 3. He's holding the ball. He's heading the ball. He's looking at his brother. He's looking at the ball. You know, so many opportunities for differences. Like I said in the story, this one's a little bit shorter than this one. This one's actually 6 feet tall. This one's actually 6 feet 4. But it's funny because this was for an article on twins in sports. And they referred to this one, who is 6 feet tall, as the shorter one. And some of his teammates started calling him Shorty. But they had to look up at him to call him Shorty. Okay, so I have had students get as many as 15 differences between these guys. And the important thing is that if you have a strategy, you're much better at it. So using mnemonic devices and strategies to approach your studying is a really good idea. Okay, so these are my sons, and at this time they were probably seniors at Johansen High, and they are now 31. This one was on the U.S. national team, and this one was on the California state team, and it was quite an adventure for soccer in our family. Okay, moving on. All right, so the question is, how does a stimulus become a memory? Well, what kind of stimulus are we talking about? Someone's name, an address, a phone number, an item you need to remember in history class, some words you need to remember in Spanish class. When somebody says what time you're meeting for the movie, that you have an appointment to get your teeth cleaned. Those are all stimuli. And fortunately, you don't really have to memorize all of them. You've got this handy-dandy external memory called your phone. But there are some things that you actually need to be able to recall for exams and for future situations. So, how does that happen? First, I'll show you a diagram showing the entire process, and then I will break down each of the steps. You can make a great drawing of the second diagram to bring to our exam. And you may add the theories of forgetting to the diagram only. Please don't write anything else on the diagram. So here's the first diagram, and you don't need to write any of this. Okay, so here's a stimulus. I'm going to use the example of a phone number. So you guys can't use the example of a phone number. You got to come up with a different example. I have had a lot of students use their passwords. Okay, so the first thing that happens in the memory system is you pay selective attention to that stimuli. Now the reason you have selective attention is because not everything matters to you. Selective means, okay, this matters to me, so I'm going to pay attention to it. Then it goes into your sensory storage, and this is sometimes also called sensory register. This is the first step in the memory process, but it lasts only 250 milliseconds. Information in your sensory storage is stored iconically and echoically. Iconically means through your eyes, and echoically means through your ears. So there's a couple easy mnemonics right there. Iconic eyes, echoic ears. And we're out of time for this session, so we'll pick up right here with our third session. Bye!